Good morning, everybody. I think we're going to make a start. Just on the usual housekeeping points at the beginning, Luis from Mexico will introduce in a moment is going to be speaking in Spanish. Therefore, will be if you don't speak Spanish at that point, you need your headset, and it's all on number one. As long as you tune into number one, it'll be translated both ways. Anyway, welcome and many thanks for getting here so early in the morning. My name is Ian Brady, Chief Officer of DePaul International, for those of you who I've not met before. I'm not, as advertised in the programme, Jeremy Swain. Jeremy Swain is an old friend and colleague of mine, unfortunately had some family issues and couldn't travel from the UK this time, so I've been asked to step in and moderate this event. I'm probably the worst moderator you'll ever have for this event, because in my own day job, when I worked for the UK government, I was responsible for government policy on begging, so I have quite strong views on it. So if you were looking for a neutral chair, you've got the wrong person. But I'll try and be as quiet as possible, Suzanne. But you're very lucky. You don't have to listen to me. We have three excellent speakers. I'll introduce them in a second. They're all going to. What I'm going to do is get all three of them to speak. Go through their presentations and the talks first, and then after that we'll move into questions, discussion, any other thoughts and views you have on the matter. Just very briefly, I'll say a few words by introduction, but people explain their work in a bit more detail as they do the presentation. On the very left is Sarah Johnson from the United Kingdom, although I think that accent betrays roots beyond the United Kingdom, I think New Zealand, but currently based in Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. Sarah is a professorial fellow, is that an expression, in the Institute for Social Policy, Housing and Equalities Research at Heriot-Watt University, and has done some tremendous work focusing on homelessness and related issues around street culture activities, particularly around begging and street drinking, precisely what we're about to cover today. We'll then hear from Sanjay Kumar from Delhi in the north of India. He's a practitioner, researcher, academic, working with the I'll get this wrong, but it's the Ashri Adhikar Abhiyan?
Yeah, it's a shelter campaign. Yeah.
Shelter rights campaign, for those of you who don't speak Hindi. Is that Hindi? There you are. He's done lots of work on issues of homelessness, urban poverty, street children, street working children, a lot of work on people's rights to pensions and education in India, so very much looking forward to hearing from Sanjay. And then finally we'll hear from Luis Enrique Hernandez from Mexico City. He's the founding partner and director of El Caracol, is that the organisation? Yeah, it's an organisation dedicated to the support of street populations and coming at things very much from a kind of rights and gender perspective. And he's been a strong advocate for street populations in Mexico, but also a number of other countries, including Honduras, Nicaragua and Guatemala. So I think you'll agree, three very strong speakers we have in front of us represent some very diverse parts of the world, so looking forward to what they have to say. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Sarah and invite us to address the audience.
Good morning, everybody. The politics, practices and perceptions of begging have fascinated me for a very long time. And I think perhaps that's in some way linked to the fact I do, as Brady correctly pointed out, hail from rural New Zealand. I hadn't seen anyone begging until my mid-20s when I first visited London. I was totally perplexed by it at the time, and I've remained fascinated by it, and I've invested an awful lot of time trying to understand it ever since. So today what I want to do is share with you some of the kind of headline findings around what is known about begging in the UK, drawing upon the pool of research available, some of which I've conducted along with my colleague Suzanne Fitzpatrick here. It's probably worth noting from the outset that the current evidence base consists almost entirely of small qualitative studies complemented by a number of public surveys, some of which have been conducted at a very local level. The only comprehensive quantitative data which attempts to calculate the scale of the issue comes from a survey of multiple exclusion homelessness led by Suzanne, which involved interviews with 450 people, about a third of whom had been involved in begging. In terms of what I'm hoping to cover today, I'm going to begin by addressing the questions of who begs and why do they beg. And then I'm going to reflect on what we know about begging practices, how people beg, policy responses, and public perceptions. So what do we know about who begs? Most of the existing evidence is actually now fairly dated. It was based on research that was conducted back in sort of between 2000 and 2010. That evidence confirms that the majority are men, and most of the surveys indicate around sort of 75 to 85% of people who beg are male. Most are aged between 25 and 55, with very few being younger or older, and it's probably important to point out that you do not see children begging on the streets of the United Kingdom. The vast majority of people who beg are homeless, if you use a very broad definition of homelessness. Many are sleeping rough, but others are staying in some form of temporary accommodation, such as a hostel or a night shelter. And it's actually quite difficult to tell from the data available what the balance of these two groups is between the sort of street homeless and people in temporary accommodation. But some police statistics from England and Wales indicate that around 1 in 5 people who were arrested for begging in 2014 were sleeping rough. All of the others had some form of accommodation that they were legally entitled to occupy. Probably also worth noting that the qualitative evidence we have suggests that most people were rough sleeping when they first begged. We also know that most people who beg are vulnerable, often having complex needs associated with co-occurring substance misuse and or mental health issues. And related to this, there is now a growing body of evidence in the UK showcasing high levels of trauma, often dating back to childhood, that are reported by members of this population. Existing evidence also indicates that the vast majority of people who beg in the UK are white British. The multiple exclusion homelessness survey I mentioned, which was conducted back in 2010, indicated that 83% were UK born. In many cities, a notable minority of people are of Roma origin, and we are hearing reports that the proportion of people from other immigrant, primarily European populations may possibly be increasing. These groups, and Roma begging in particular, present very specific sets of issues that have not been the subject of any in-depth research. We really know very little about the characteristics of these individuals or the reasons they beg. So this being so, the majority of what I'm about to discuss will actually focus primarily on the profile and practices of British nationals who beg. In terms of numbers, it's worth noting that we're talking about tens of people begging in UK city centres, not hundreds, as might be true in some other contexts. That said, we are hearing reports that numbers are increasing in some major cities, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the possible explanations for this later. The scale of change hasn't been measured in any systematic way, but it is a cause for concern among stakeholders and has been the subject of some media commentary. Very clearly, we need a lot more research to assess the scale and issue of the scale of the issue and the profile of people involved, given how dated the existing research is. Why do people beg in the UK? To date, evidence has demonstrated consistently that the money acquired is predominantly spent on illicit drugs, most commonly heroin and crack cocaine. And this graph, again from the multiple exclusion homelessness study, showed that 52% of those who had ever begged acknowledged that they spent most of the money they gained on drugs. A quarter spent most on alcohol and only 16% spent most on food. The association between begging and hard drug use in the UK has been corroborated time and time again by qualitative research over the years. It's worth noting at this point that the UK's welfare system dictates that with some exceptions, most people are legally entitled to social security to ensure that their essential living needs, particularly as regards food and shelter, are met. Further to this, most urban centres are fairly well resourced in terms of outlets offering free food to homeless people and other vulnerable groups. And this goes a long way to explaining why the acquisition of money for food features rather less than might be true in some other contexts. People who beg in the UK typically explain that they view begging as the least bad of the bad bunch of options. They normally identify the alternatives as shoplifting, burglary, or less commonly, sex work. In their eyes, begging is less damaging than theft because members of the public are given the option of giving rather than having resources taken from them. They view begging as less risky than theft because the consequences for getting caught are less severe. And they'll also emphasise that begging carries less risk of personal harm than does sex work. All that said, we're beginning to hear from stakeholders in some cities that the picture on who begs and why they beg might potentially be changing. Some are reporting that they're seeing an increasing proportion of people who beg who are not only accommodated in settled housing, but they're also begging to meet essential living needs, such as acquiring food, rather than purely to fund an addiction. They hypothesise that this is attributable to two things. Firstly, the restriction and benefit entitlements associated with recent welfare reforms, and secondly, the increased use of benefit sanctions, wherein welfare recipients have had their payments stopped because they've failed to meet associated behavioural conditions around work preparation or search. Taken together, these have meant that some people have been left with extremely limited or no income for a set period of time. We don't know how widespread this phenomenon is, nor do we fully understand the drivers behind it. Again, this is to highlight another need for further research. So how do people beg? I'll describe the main styles of begging with the aid of some photos taken for me by people who were involved in begging. Now, the photos are not of great quality, and I must emphasise this is in no way a reflection of the photographer's skill. It's merely a reflection of the fact I gave them really rubbish, cheap, disposable cameras to work with, restricted research funding budgets and all that. I'm sure you'll agree that they've done a sterling job with this rather less than ideal equipment. Most people who beg in the UK do so in what is typically described as a passive fashion, in that they'll sit in a strategically selected place, typically referred to as a pitch, and they'll either ask something along the lines of, "Please sir," or "Please miss, can you spare any change," or some kind of variant thereof. Or they'll not interact directly verbally with the public, but they'll simply sit with a sign which says something along the lines of, "Homeless and hungry, please help," or something to that effect. So here we see someone sitting outside an off-licensed store in what is one of his regular pitches. This one is a gentleman sitting outside an automated cash machine, which some people prefer. And here we see another sitting at the very, very far end of a pedestrian overbridge. Some pitches are regarded as better in that they're more lucrative than others, because they seem to offer the optimal balance between proximity to lots of hopefully sympathetic passers-by, but they're also out of the way of residents or business owners who might complain. There's a degree of competition for the best pitches, and the more dominant members of this population tend to dictate who can use theirs and when. Only a small minority of people who beg in the UK are mobile, and they'll actually walk about and approach people to ask them for change. Those who do usually only beg in busy public thoroughfares. It's unusual for people who beg to approach people in cafes or restaurants, as might be the case in some other contexts, but perhaps that's too cold for us to eat or drink outside on many occasions. Whichever tactic is used, research confirms that the more people earn from begging, the greater the levels of consumption of whatever their substance of choice is, be that drugs or alcohol, and the greater the negative impacts on their health. Most people who beg adhere to an unwritten code of conduct, sort of governing interactions with the public, but a minority are demanding, verbally abusive, or physically threatening. In many such cases, their addiction not only affects their ability to adhere to the kind of norms of socially acceptable behaviour, but it's also evident in their physical appearance, in that they looked unkempt and unwell. These situations are understandably a common cause of complaint, and these so-called aggressive beggars tend to be the focus of police attention. So what have the kind of policy and police responses been? People who beg will almost always come into contact with street outreach workers who will offer them support to access accommodation or treatment for substance misuse issues and so on. But interestingly, the extent to which service providers attempt to deter people from begging varies quite significantly, and there's a real geographic element to this. In English cities such as London, where begging is regarded to be a significant problem and that the numbers are very high, outreach workers often actively try to dissuade people from begging by emphasising the risks that persistent drug use has on their health, risk of overdose and so on. In Scotland, in contrast, it's rare to come across an outreach worker who'll do this. Most tend to offer support but are wary of pressuring people to stop begging and or engage with support. In regards to legal responses, in the vast majority of instances, people who beg are simply asked to move on by the police. But enforcement is used, and more so in England than in other UK jurisdictions. It's used in two different ways. Sometimes, if a city is regarded as having a problem with begging, a clampdown will be initiated, where frontline police officers are told to not walk on by and arrest people they encounter begging. In such cases, enforcement is used in a fairly blanket fashion, but arguably more commonly, enforcement is targeted at the most problematic people who beg, particularly those who beg in the aggressive fashion I described earlier. There's a number of enforcement measures used to stop people from begging, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'll just focus on the two most common ones. The first is arrest under the Vagrancy Act 1824, which applies in some but not all UK jurisdictions, and this gives the police powers to arrest and fine people who beg. The second are ASBOs, almost the recent equivalent, the Criminal Behaviour Order, Antisocial Behaviour Order and Criminal Behaviour Order. These are targeted at the most aggressive people who beg. They contain conditions which might include prohibitions on specific acts such as begging or entering particular areas. And the penalties for breaching conditions can include imprisonment for up to 5 years, although in practice these sentences tend to be much shorter. Sometimes they're only used after offers of intensive, tailored support that have been refused. Sometimes they're served in quite independently of or in the absence of such support. Evidence indicates that when combined with support, enforcement measures such as ASBOs can work in that they deter people from begging and encourage them to take up offers of support. And a number of people I've interviewed have gone as far as to say that their ASBO saved their life. But these kind of measures can also lead to displacement, either by pushing people to beg elsewhere or by causing them to generate income in other ways, by shoplifting or, less commonly, sex work. The use of enforcement measures like these is highly controversial, with views on its justifiability or otherwise being very highly polarised. Proponents of these responses typically justify their use in part on reports that begging is intimidating for the public and or damaging to local businesses and tourism, the damaging effects of street lifestyles on the well-being of those involved, and here they'll highlight their vulnerability to attack, their disproportionate representation in drug-related deaths, and their restricted ability to discern what's in their own best interests given the incapacitating effects of substance misuse or mental ill health. Opponents, however, object on grounds of the inadequacy of the offer being made to people who beg, and here they'll talk about the poor supply and or unsuitability of substance misuse treatment. Or they'll object on grounds that they see these kind of measures as being a paternalistic imposition of values on those they believe should have a right to ask other people for money. And they'll also object on grounds that some of these measures can risk further compromising the welfare of already vulnerable individuals in light of evidence that harder enforcement measures do not always work. Another response has been the use of anti-begging campaigns or diverted giving schemes, and these aim to deter members of the public from giving directly to people who beg. On the left here, we see a poster from an early campaign that was known as Killing with Kindness. These have been adopted in many UK cities, and they urge the public to exercise their compassionate impulses by supporting a local charity rather than giving directly to people who beg, and it makes a distinct link between begging and substance misuse. There's been a notable change in tone of some of these campaigns over the years, and the one I show on the right here came from a recent campaign in Nottingham, and this very deliberately depicts people who beg as deviant fraudsters. It's worth noting that the campaign on the right elicited a very negative response from the public on social media for reasons I probably don't need to explain. There has not as yet been any detailed research examining what, if any, impact these kind of campaigns have on public attitudes. We genuinely do not know what influence they have on the perceptions of people who beg or members of the public's inclination to give. What we do know about public perceptions of people who beg is based almost entirely on small local surveys, plus a few focus groups that have been conducted as part of broader qualitative studies. From these, we know that members of the public don't like to see people begging, but also that they're much more likely to consider inconsiderately parked cars to be a bigger problem in their area than they do begging. Certainly a number of surveys on antisocial behaviour have highlighted that. We know that some people will not enter a shop if someone is begging outside it, or that they'll cross the road to avoid someone begging. And so, begging does have a negative impact on local business and tourism. We know that some people are genuinely fearful of or intimidated by strangers who ask them for money, and that begging is a source of complaint in every area in which it occurs. Some of these complaints are primarily, or perhaps even purely, about aesthetics, and that some people are uncomfortable with such visible reminders of poverty and disadvantage. But some concerns are about genuine antisocial behaviour, because some members of the public have been verbally abused or physically intimidated by someone begging. What also jumps out from the evidence on public perceptions is the level of misunderstanding about who begs and why they beg. Notably, the majority of the British public assumes that people who beg are street homeless, that is, they're sleeping rough. And they think that if they're not sleeping rough, they are in some way bogus or fraudulent. So in short, the extent of public sympathy is apparently strongly associated with presumptions about housing status. And these presumptions are very often misinformed. So to conclude, to date, evidence in the UK has pointed to very strong associations between, firstly, begging and substance misuse, particularly illicit drug use, and secondly, begging and homelessness, broadly defined to include temporary accommodation as well as street homelessness. We have reason to believe that the degree of overlap between these different scenes may be changing, but we do not fully understand the scale or nature of these changes. And so there's a very clear need for more research on the profile of individuals involved and their reasons for begging, and also the impact of policy responses on those affected and public perceptions of people who beg. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think very, very interesting indeed. And I would agree with you completely. I think there's more about what's happening in the UK that we need to understand on begging that's different from 10, 15 years ago. Certainly when I was involved 10, 15 years ago, there was very few migrants amongst the street homeless, very few migrant beggars. And certainly in some of the cities I've been working in, many of the beggars are from the Roma community, from Eastern Europe. And I think that's also an interesting change, but also I think it plays on public perception as well about whether these are people who are entitled to beg or not. So I think it's a very fluid and changing scene, but very, very interesting and excellent presentation. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to hear from a completely different perspective in India. You're very welcome, Sanjay.
Yeah, good morning everybody. Good morning. Talking on the issue of begging itself is very complicated. It's not very easy thing, and it's not a matter of only giving and receiving kind of relationship. If we talk about the begging in the contemporary society, is basically a symptom of a number of social problems. Problems including homelessness, poverty, drug addiction, alcoholism, mental illness, and many times lack of education and lack of trainings, vocational skills. But in the larger perspectives, if you look into the begging aspects, most of the time we are visualizing, any part of the country in India or the globe, every beggar are some sort of performers. If you really wanted to get something from anybody, he need to perform something in front of society. Like somebody is like singing in the different squares, dancing, presenting, and performing in the various kind of activities. So begging is not a very simple aspect or act that need to understand. It's a very complicated thing. In fact, if you understand the causes for the begging, we definitely see it's a large number of lists. Like broken homes and homelessness can be one basic reasons in India that's causing beggary. Physical handicap is another thing that's also, creating scope for the begging. And unguided childhood, childish kind of things. Mental illness, one thing that's also occurring time and again for the begging and coming there. Apart from that, there are many new things that has been emerged in the causes for the begging. In fact, if you really want to understand, we have to look after the last 20-30 years when the globe was started experiencing the new kind of change. The new global liberal economy has started emerging. And this kind of new trend has given an opportunity, especially in the rural areas where there's lack of employment, there is no job, there is a gap between so many relationships. So this kind of new set of emerging global economy has been also impacted India as very badly. And what happened after that, there's a new urban shelter centers has been started emerging in the very rapid forms. So this urban center has been also become a center for providing jobs, center for providing the new kind of scope, center for providing to fulfilling our aspiration as well, in fact. So many people have started coming from rural area to the urban center in the search of the better livelihood and better job kind of things. So, but unfortunately this urban area was not set enough and equipped enough to fulfill their dreams and desires and demands. So what started becoming in the urban areas, like people becoming homeless in a very rapid forms. So if people becoming homeless, they are not able to get inside shelter, they are not able to get different kind of basic services. So their condition of vulnerability started going very, very down, and they are not able to cope up with their own this kind of situation. So in this particular and vulnerable situation, what any human being, you, me, or anybody can think about. So basically, he started looking for the food, looking for their choice of food, their choice of clothes, and this kind of basic amenities. And they started moving in different parts of the city. So these new trends of emerging global concept and emerging new global theory kind of thing has provided an opportunity for becoming people more and more homeless, and also people get involved in the begging for their survival and all. Apart from that, I would like to bring a notice in yours. Before coming here, I concluded 3-4 focus group discussion with the various part of Delhi to get to understand about what's the basic reason. So I met a person, he is 57 or 58 years of age. In 2010, what happened with them? He lived in a village, and this village was full of the higher communities of our society. I mean, India has a different kind of society, and there's a lot of clash on the name of society as well. So this person was from the, very down society, we are lower on the bottom. So what the others did with them, they just closed them in their house and burnt them. So what happened? Finally they just escaped from there and just started asking for justice and started moving to police commissioners or different places. And since 2002 to till date, he is on the verge of asking justice. So where he should go? And who is going to support with them? And another similar case, I found a woman. She is nearly 47, 48 years of the age, and she is from a state called Bundelkhand. We have it's a very drought-affected areas. So we have there are hardly supply of water or those kind of things. They are not able to get water properly. So so they did not. She did not access to the water, and due to the scarcity of the water, they are not able to get food and those kind of things. So they moved from this place to come into the Delhi, and started sitting one place, one temple, and just asking for their food and just asking for their basic amenities from the society. Because if you really wanted to understand the begging in India, it has a roots. I mean, it's a historical aspects also. India is a country where we have the rich culture, and we have rich experiences of nearly 5,000 years ago. So time and again we have some sort of support coming up from the society as well. And society has some kind of looking after and taking care of those. They are not on the verge of getting their own bread and butters. So they have different kind of providing support to them. So, but fortunately, till in the early of the 19th century, we able to looking this bakery as an issue merely related with the religion and merely related with the religious sort of problem. But in the early of the 19th century, the Britishers who used to rule in the India, and though they have bring many draconian laws over there, but the first time they started thinking beyond the religions. I mean, they started thinking bakery beyond the religion. So not looked after all around the religious aspects only. So they thought, no, it's not only religious problem, and society cannot able to adopt and cannot able to resolve this entire thing. So they maybe, started thinking to give a new dimension with the social and economic aspects. So unfortunately, after some time, India became a country of independent republic, and first time in the 1959, the India itself has drafted its first Anti-Bakery Act law, and according to this is called like the BPBA Act 1959, Bombay Provincial for Begging Act, and this time this act has been replicated in the at least 30 different part of our country. And in the name of this act, anybody, if he or she can receiving arms or she can receiving any sort of assistance from anybody, he can be caught, he can be sent to the jail, he can be first time if a person is doing the same thing, he can be sent to the jail for the 1 year to 3 years. In the same person, he is doing the same activities, he can be sent jail to the 5 years, and if the same person is doing and caught this by this act, he can be sent to the jail for the next 10 years. So I mean, though the agencies and government, they are saying like they are the rehabilitation homes and this is not jail, but if you go inside and see their administrative kind of thing and vocational, they are offering the vocational training, the food and all those kind of the below the basic standards level. Unfortunately, this this act has been started criminalizing anybody. I mean, in Delhi, so we have Delhi is now has a nearly one of the India's highest populated city, and every square of city you will find there is squads from the government, and he started caught people in the name of homelessness, in the name of, if let's say if a person is crossing this road and if he is just hesitating doing this, anybody came from there and asked like, oh, where you are going? You come in, sit in the van and I'll take you some places. And suddenly they'll take you to the Seva Kutir. This place is called the Seva Kutir. It's an observation home for them, but it's a kind of jail. And why they are doing like that? Because they have the pressure. They have the pressure from government why you are not fulfilling and executing such kind of laws to evacuate this sort of population. Similarly, and I mean, this act has been one act that need to understand very beautifully and need to understand very neatly. During 2010, when India was host for the Commonwealth Games, and this act was the one act who was banished lot many homeless people, lot many innocent people in the name of this act, and they just swept from the main city to the outskirts. So in the outskirts, there's not lot many temples, lot many places where people can get basic foods. In fact, if you go into, I mean, little bit of deeper of this issue, you will find there are 2 or 3 categories of people who are basically in the begging, like for whom it is a vocation, those who are forced to do begging, those who do it circumstantially. So in India and in our concept, people mostly are doing it circumstantially, not with their choice, not with their wish and desires, and what they're getting from people like society. They are getting some of rupees, some of money, some of food item. So it's a basic subsistence. It's not asking and not purchasing and not going to, ask many things more. So, and it'll look like the places where they used to go. They used to go at the shopping complexes, because shopping complexes, people have this inspiration, like kind of mindset. They can go there because of people are here for purchasing something, so it must be the sympathetic kind of thing, and they'll give something. Places for the busing, the bus stops, railway station, red lights, traffic lights, signals, historical site, especially the heritage site in Delhi, and all the eating places. Eating places is one of the places where we found a lot many beggars. All the times they are rounding up, and the female beggar prefer for the begging in the shopping areas compared to the residential area. Many times this beggar who people are involved in the begging, they hardly change their locations. I mean, if somebody is asking alms in the one of the central area, definitely he'll going to stay right there for a long time. And many times we have found people are coming here to get some kind of sustenance from 300 kilometers also, 200 kilometers. After 2, 3, 4 days, they've just gone back once again. they have decided their days as well. In fact, in Indian religion and cultures, according to day, we are God has reserved. In the Monday there is Shiv, so the temples dedicated to the Shiv. On the Monday, this all begging or all those beggars will be down there. And the Saturday there is God like Hanuman. So there are all the Hanuman temples. They're full of these kind of things. On the Thursday there is God like Sai Baba and all. So all the Sai Baba temple was full of those kind of thing. So every day, I mean, the different places they used to beg. Their timing is also very reluctant. Like somebody started begging in the morning, somebody started begging in the evening time, somebody started on an average, people receive begging in like 150 rupees to nearly 300 rupees. So, and many of them have saved their money for their, back to the root as well. So, many times in India, begging act as giving an opportunity for full of peer exploitation. We met a girl, she was 12 years of age. She just ran away from her home, and because of her father and mother mother died, father married once again, and she was beating badly. So she just left their home and came down at the New Delhi railway station, and from there they started, their life started becoming the hell of everything. So the goons from the stations, they just take away and started giving some kind of solution. Solution is one kind of drugs, So it's basically a combination of the thinner and whitener. So the people who use it, it's just keep in their own hanky or handkerchief and then snuff like that. So people started giving this kind of thing to girls and started raping her. And till 2-3 years of extensive exploitation of this girl, people started the gangs of such kind of activities who were facilitated with them started raping her, and started saying you should go to that place and earn some money from there and just give it to us, then I'll give it to you like that much of drugs to you. So it's also like a position where people becoming a lot of exploited, in fact. So if you look after the courts and on the constitutional review, so Constitution has given this freedom of expressions to express their basic desires. Like if I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry, if I'm asking to you, so you should just support me. I'm hungry. I wanted to eat. So this is my fundamental right to expressing my this kind of thing. But if I'm just doing like that, and automatically I'm doing like that, so I'm becoming a criminal, because it's begging in India is like behaving like a criminal. But the irony of this law is like if I'm doing like it and I'm receiving some alms, I become a criminal. But if you're giving me, so you are not. And the Supreme Court of India also has said, like, if you have your desires, you can express yourself. So there is no material. Another thing is like there's very famous judgment of this our court. This court has given this direction in 2005. An innocent person had caught in the name of this law, BPBA law, and produced in the court. So court asked him, on the what basis you are just caught him? Only this policeman has say like he is doing the begging, but are there any witness over there? So policeman said no, there is no witness. So without witnessing, how I can rely upon you to caught anybody and victimizing any person like that. So court has come up with a very good judgment and started looking after very positive aspects and saying like there's a great need of economy and social integration of such population in, and look after this kind of things. Just 2 minutes, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of complexity on this issue, and issue has been alive for the century and century. So, but there is always a scope. The Buddha says the full world is full of suffering, but there is always way to come out from the suffering. So there's, no ending of everything. So what we did it, in fact, in India, I'm also one of the members for the drafting the model legislation act for the elimination of the beggary. So, this is a very on first phase. So, but our parliament has started discussing and started trying to repeal the old act like this BPBA, and started thinking to see in the different prospects of the begging is a social kind of problem. And apart from that, we have also started like the preventive kind of programs and policies for the destitute and the beggars to enroll and to support them. And the most important thing is like their identity and enumeration. This is the two things that need to give the proper weight. During the census, most of the times they are not enumerated. If you're the person who is not enumerated in the census, so how any federal government or the state government will draft it, the plan and the policies for them. So for that kind of thing, they are started enumerating also, and started giving a new sort of identity. Like once the people started moving from their route to the centers, urban center, in between they lost their identity. So re-establish their identity with the identity documents like voting identity cards, the bank accounts, the other documents that need to give them, strengthen them, and also provide them an opportunity to come back once again in the mainstream, in the main civil society. From there they can, fulfill their dreams with a different mindsets. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, Sanjay, and I think you very much go over the complicated mix of kind of social and religious cultural issues around begging in India. And as a regular visitor to the country, I have to say you can see it, that the progress being made in India is phenomenal socially. Some of the movements around access to pensions, access to schools, the 100-day employment days for Dalits, whatever, incredible progress. But at the same time, that movement to the cities is just exacerbating all the problems you've just described. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Indian currency, to beg all day for 300 rupees is the equivalent of less than £3 a day for people to survive on. Thank you very much for that, Sanjay. And with no further ado, I'll hand over to Louis, who will now hear from the issues and current situation in Mexico City in Spanish.
Bien, yo voy a hablar en español, entonces trataré de hablar despacio para que los traductores no se traben a la hora porque yo hablo muy rápido, entonces trataré de hacerlo más despacio. Bien, pues muchas gracias por la invitación a platicar sobre este tema que, tal como escuchamos con mis antecesores, es un tema complicado y complejo. Nos estamos encontrando con personas que piden dinero en las calles, o lo que se puede llamar como mendicidad, les podemos llamar mendigos, pedigüeños. Sin embargo, los análisis que se han venido haciendo desde hace mucho tiempo se han enfocado en el sujeto, es decir, en la persona que pide dinero y en el por qué pide dinero. Difícilmente se han enfocado los análisis a hablar de sus derechos a la hora de estar ya en una condición complicada. No sé si aquí alguna o alguno de ustedes en algún momento de su vida se ha quedado sin dinero y ha tenido la necesidad de pedir ayuda a otra persona en la calle. No te quedas sin dinero, perdiste la cartera o perdiste el monedero y tienes que pedirle a algún transeúnte apoyo. También ahora hay algunos videos en YouTube donde se hacen comparaciones de una persona que va con saco y pide dinero y le dan, y una persona la misma persona se quita el saco y está sucio y la actitud cambia. Yo creo que por eso me permitiré tratar, más que hablar de el sujeto que pide dinero o que mendiga en las calles, pensar en qué pasa con lo que está alrededor de él, ¿no? Evidentemente, bueno, trataremos de hablar también de lo que ello sucede, pero ¿cuáles son sus derechos? ¿Qué derechos humanos tienen las personas? Si evidentemente estamos viendo que en Inglaterra y en la India lo que están recibiendo es violencia, ¿no? Yo también les platicaré que hay leyes en la Ciudad de México que están castigando a las personas que piden dinero. Y la pregunta es ¿por qué? Si se supone que son personas que están ya de por sí en una condición difícil, son personas que, y por eso ponía yo el ejemplo, si alguien se ha quedado o ha estado en la posibilidad de pedir dinero, porque pedirle a alguien ayuda en la calle es difícil. O sea, yo acercarme a alguien y decirle dame una moneda porque perdí mi dinero y tengo que llegar a mi casa, eso no es sencillo, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que es interesante hablar de quiénes son. Y en la calle no solamente piden quienes viven en la calle. Encontramos personas adultas mayores. Ahora mismo en la Ciudad de México estamos teniendo un fenómeno complicado de personas adultas mayores que están saliendo a las calles porque sus familias no tienen capacidad para atenderlos porque tienen alguna enfermedad crónico-degenerativa, ¿no? Estamos encontrando personas pobres que no tienen acceso a la vivienda y terminan en la calle. Hay el caso de una mujer que su esposo la abandona, ella en depresión, y 3 meses después termina en la calle, pidiendo dinero, ¿no? Estamos encontrando personas con discapacidad física y discapacidad psicosocial, hablemos de temas de esquizofrenia, que terminan en la calle porque no hay una estructura que les permita tener un apoyo y piden dinero, evidentemente. Mujeres solas con sus hijos también terminan en una estructura para pedir dinero. Y lo que llamamos nosotros en el Caracol y que hemos ido impulsando hace mucho tiempo, que son poblaciones callejeras, que es un concepto que se diseñó en el 2002 por Juan Martín Pérez, que está por acá con nosotros, y es un concepto que trata de superar la idea de la situación de calle. Es decir, la situación de calle nos hablaría de un momento específico, ¿no?, de la vida de una persona que está en la calle. Hablar de poblaciones callejeras es un concepto más desde la sociología que nos permite analizar el fenómeno de una manera más amplia. Estas son las personas que pueden o llegan a pedir dinero en las calles. Evidentemente, algo que me gusta mucho de este foro, tanto el día de ayer como el día de hoy, es el tema de la data, de los datos. Y en verdad necesitamos saber cuántos son, pero no solo a nivel de número, sino qué condiciones y sobre todo cuál es el estatus de sus derechos humanos, que es lo que yo preguntaba ayer. Hablar de un censo ya habla de los derechos de las personas para ser contadas dentro de un país, y evidentemente en la Ciudad de México no tenemos un censo acabado. Por eso preguntábamos cuánto cuesta hacer un censo, ¿no?, en una ciudad de 10, de 15 millones de personas, bueno, 25 si hablamos con el área conurbada, 25 millones de personas. ¿Cuánto cuesta hacer un censo de esa magnitud? Lo que sucede es que no sabemos cuántas personas ya no solo viven en la calle, sino que piden dinero en la calle bajo el primer gráfico que les presentaba, ¿no? No tenemos un dato exacto de cuántos son, y eso en sí mismo ya es grave, porque no podemos diseñar entonces la política pública de una manera adecuada. Esta lámina es solamente de contexto. En México somos aproximadamente 119 millones de personas. De esos 119 millones de personas, 53 millones viven en pobreza. Es decir, ese ya es un dato complicado a la hora de hablar de gente que pida dinero en las calles. Estamos hablando de la mitad del país en pobreza. De esa mitad, 11 millones viven en pobreza extrema. ¿Qué significa? Que no tienen para comer, no tienen dónde vivir, no tienen acceso a los servicios, ¿no? Entonces estamos hablando de muchos millones de personas que estarían potencialmente en calidad de pedir dinero, ¿no? Lo cual a nosotros nos resulta preocupante a la hora de pensar en el diseño de las políticas públicas, sobre todo pensando ya a la hora de definir si son mujeres, si son hombres, si son niños, si son niñas, ¿no? Creo que ahí resulta pertinente que necesitamos saber cuántas personas están pidiendo dinero en las calles. Pero ¿cómo generan recursos estas personas que ya identificamos que estarán dentro de este universo de pobreza? Estamos encontrando gente que sí, que pide dinero, que estira las manos, tal como lo comentaba el compañero de la India, gente que estira las manos y pide recursos, como que está en la parte de mendicidad. Tenemos gente que limpia parabrisas y evidentemente pide una moneda a cambio de limpiar el parabrisas. Estamos encontrando gente que canta en el metro. No siempre son los mejores cantantes y a veces desafinan un poco, pero también es gente que eso hace para conseguir un recurso. O tenemos un fenómeno muy serio de gente que se acuesta en vidrios. Lo comenzamos a ver hace como 20 años, gente que se acostaba en vidrios y eran prácticamente, sobre todo varones, entre, no sé, 15, 25 años. Ahora mismo en la ciudad estamos encontrando mujeres que se acuestan en vidrios, ¿no? Niños que se acuestan en vidrios y hacen esta acción de fakir. En una entrevista que le hacía yo a una de las mujeres y le preguntaba por qué ahora ella se acostaba en vidrios, ella responde, y es un video que pueden encontrar en YouTube, ahí sí tiene traducción, subtítulos al inglés, pero es interesante el video porque ella lo que plantea es que antes de acostarse en vidrios ella contaba cuentos en el metro, contaba historias. Y lo que refiere es que a la gente no le gusta que le cuentes historias, le gusta verte sufrir. Y por eso te da una moneda. Creo que este ejemplo que ella plantea es interesante a la hora de qué es lo que la población que ya está en una situación complicada tiene que hacer para sobrevivir. No es en sí mismo el acto de mendigar porque a alguien le guste pedir dinero o le gusta estar en una banqueta sentado esperando la dádiva de la sociedad. Hay una serie de condiciones sociales que no están permitiendo que estas personas cambien esa condición de pedir dinero en las calles. Creo que, no quiero dejar de mencionar esto, la mendicidad no es un tema nuevo en México, ni en América Latina, ni en muchos países del mundo. Es un tema que tiene mucho tiempo. Hay una autora que se llama Sylvia Arrow, ella hace una investigación sobre el tema de lo que llaman el Tribunal de Vagos. Había una ley, que es la ley de vagos, así le llamaban, de una manera despectiva, y la ley de vagos lo que hacía es castigar a las personas que vagaban o que pedían dinero en las calles. Ella hace la investigación documental de 1745 a 1845. Pues estamos hablando de hace muchos siglos. Lo curioso es que ahora mismo en la Ciudad de México está la ley de cultura cívica, que evidentemente también castiga a las personas que piden dinero en las calles, bajo el argumento de que estorban en las calles. Ese es el argumento, que están sentados y yo voy a pasar y me estorban. Entonces yo puedo pedir a la policía y se lo llevan bajo de arrestarlo. La mía es interesante porque no todas las personas que viven en las calles piden dinero, muchos de ellos trabajan en trabajos que la gente que ha estudiado no haría. Por ejemplo, tiran basura, esta idea de limpiar parabrisas, pueden ayudarle a la gente a armar sus puestos semifijos en la calle, y ahí también tienen dinero. Por eso decimos que no todos los que viven en las calles piden dinero. Sin embargo, sí todos los que viven en las calles alguna vez se han enfrentado a la idea de pedir dinero, ¿no? Que eso es interesante, para hacer una diferenciación y no hablar de que toda la gente que está en la calle pide o pide limosna, ¿no? Ellos hacen un esfuerzo cotidiano. De hecho, hay una entrevista que hago a un adulto y él plantea que él paga impuestos, ¿no? Él dice, yo que trabajo en la calle, que vivo en la calle, yo pago un impuesto, porque cuando compro comida, ahí estoy pagando un impuesto. Ese impuesto tendría que regresar a mí en servicios públicos. Ese era el análisis que hacía Jonathan, que desgraciadamente ya murió hace 2 años, pero él hacía como este análisis. Y eso nos llevó a hablar también del aporte económico que hacen las personas, aún desde la exclusión, o lo que significa pedir dinero, hacen un aporte económico que tendría que verse reflejado en ellos en servicios públicos, lo cual evidentemente no sucede. Sin embargo, hay una preocupación que tenemos algunas organizaciones en la Ciudad de México, y es que la pobreza tiene rostro de mujer. Según la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, por cada 100 hombres pobres hay 118 mujeres pobres. Esto es grave, sobre todo ahora que voy a presentar esta siguiente lámina. Hay una ley en la Ciudad de México, que es el Código Civil, el artículo 492, creo que sí, el artículo 492 del Código Civil, que lo que argumenta es que una mujer le pueden quitar a sus hijos y ponerlos en un albergue si no reconoce o no se le ve que tiene capacidad económica o moral. Esto nos parece muy grave porque imagínense una mujer que puede estar pidiendo dinero en la calle y tiene a sus hijos, la autoridad podría tener, ahora sí que la autoridad de quitarle a sus hijos y llevarlos a un albergue. Lo que hemos encontrado no es solamente que el hecho mismo de retirar a sus hijos, que ya es grave, está violando sus derechos de sus hijos a vivir en familia, eso ya nos parece delicado, sino sobre todo las condiciones en las que queda una mujer que le han quitado a sus hijos. Lo inmediato que encontramos son mujeres que viven depresión, no hay tratamientos para ella y entran como en una espiral de deterioro. Evidentemente el consumo de sustancias aumenta. Entonces aquí nos volvemos a preguntar, ¿qué es más grave? ¿Que esté pidiendo dinero en las calles o que hay una política que viola los derechos de sus hijos a vivir en familia y los derechos de ella a estar con sus hijos? Creo que aquí resulta pertinente este tema. ¿Cuánto gana una persona en las calles? Puede variar en función de la actividad. Si solo pide dinero puede ganar $5 al día, si canta en el metro puede ganar $16, o si se acuesta en vidrios quizás hasta $22 o un poco más, ¿no? Aquí diríamos, bueno, pues es un recurso que les puede permitir para comer. En entrevistas que hicimos a 47 mujeres, lo que ellas nos plantean es que el 80% del dinero que ellas obtienen lo ocupan para su familia y para su persona, es decir, darle de comer a sus hijos y a veces pagar un hotel o lo que sus hijos e hijas les van pidiendo, que eso me parece interesante, porque yo creo que sí, lo ocupan en drogas también, pues sí, es parte de una cultura que ellos han venido desarrollando, y otro 10% lo ocupan en diversión. Lo que nosotros hemos ido encontrando es que en la medida en que estas mujeres o estos varones van teniendo mejores condiciones físicas, van teniendo acceso a servicios, el consumo de drogas va disminuyendo. Por eso, lo que hace la autoridad de colocar este estigma de que todos los que piden dinero consumen drogas, nos parece delicado y creemos pertinente que es una representación social que tenemos que cambiar. Cuando en la guía que nos mandaron hablaba de las consecuencias de la mendicidad, yo decía, a ver, ¿podemos hablar de las consecuencias de la mendicidad o de las consecuencias de la ausencia de programas para abatir la mendicidad? ¿No? Yo creo que aquí es grave que estemos hablando de personas que están pidiendo dinero como los que están allá pidiendo dinero, como los que están fuera de, y no como una responsabilidad de los estados de generar acciones pertinentes para que ellos puedan encontrar mejores alternativas a solamente pedir dinero. Y creo que una de las más graves tiene que ver con la discriminación. En la Ciudad de México, el Consejo para Prevenir y Eliminar la Discriminación elaboró una encuesta y lo que identificaron ahí es que las personas que viven en la calle o piden dinero en la calle son entre las 10 poblaciones más discriminadas. De hecho, son la número 8. Cuando hicieron un cruce de variables, identificaron que terminan siendo la población más discriminada a la hora de acceder a servicios. ¿Qué significa? Que si alguien va sucio, oliendo a algún solvente o a drogas, y va a pedir un servicio de salud, se lo van a negar. Algo tan grave como que, digo, en México se paga por entrar al baño, no sé si aquí en Estados Unidos se paga por entrar al baño, pero en México pagas no sé, 40 centavos de dólar por entrar a un baño. Aunque esta población lleve su dinero, no los van a dejar entrar, bajo el principio de que ensucian el baño. Entonces, esto nos parece muy grave y habla de la discriminación. De hecho, hay un concepto que no ha tenido mucho uso y que impulsa una compañera en España, que ahorita recuerdo su nombre, que denomina aporofobia. ¿Qué es la aporofobia? La aversión hacia la gente pobre, ¿no? bajo el principio, así como la homofobia, la aversión a no querer ser o a ser, o a las personas de diversidad sexual, la porofobia tiene que ver con esta aversión que se tiene de ser pobre o de la gente que es pobre. Y esto nos parece pertinente reconocerlo porque no encontramos campañas que puedan abatir esa discriminación que tienen o que se genera hacia las personas que piden dinero o viven en las calles. Otro de los casos graves y que bueno, la compañera de Nueva Zelanda comentaba de lo que sucede en Reino Unido, tiene que ver con la limpieza social. Los actos de limpieza social tienen que ver con acciones sistemáticas o políticas públicas que retiran de la calle a las personas solo bajo el principio de que están pidiendo dinero o viviendo en las calles. Esos son actos sistemáticos. Nosotros lo que hemos documentado es que, y lo preguntaban también ayer, qué sucedía en eventos internacionales cuando había gente que pedía dinero y vivía en las calles. Tan solo en la Ciudad de México el año pasado, que fue la visita del Papa Francisco, la primera que hacía a México, tanto la Red por los Derechos de la Infancia en México como el Caracol, documentamos que 180 personas habían sido retiradas alrededor de donde iba a cruzar el Papa. Hacíamos un poco la broma que vivir en la calle no es pecado, ¿no? Pero no solo además eso, sino que estas personas no tienen derecho ni a la bendición del Papa, ¿no? Lo grave no solo era eso, sino que esas 180 personas nunca nos dijeron dónde estaban. La autoridad pasó, se las llevó y no dieron cuenta de dónde estaban estas personas, lo cual nos parece muy grave, ¿no? Porque lo que tenían eran reflectores internacionales y no querían que eso se viera. Otro argumento que tienen para retirar a las personas del espacio público es el mejoramiento del entorno urbano. Y dicen, vamos a recuperar parques, vamos a recuperar jardines. Tan solo entre 2016 y lo que va de 2017, ha habido un retiro en un solo municipio de 25 grupos de población callejera, lo cual harían un aproximado de 400 personas. ¿No? Esto nos parece grave porque entonces decimos, ¿dónde están estas 400 personas? Como visitas que hemos hecho a los grupos encontramos personas aisladas, ¿no? Pero no encontramos a todos y eso nos parece como llamativo. Este es un dato, nada más les voy a dejar. El Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo hizo una encuesta en México y el 40% de las personas encuestadas dijo que sí avalaba la limpieza social. Nada más es un dato. Con esto como cerrando, creo que lo más grave que estamos enfrentando es que al no haber una política pública, al no haber programas educativos, al no existir como estas oportunidades para la población que puedan cambiar sus condiciones, estamos encontrando una transmisión intergeneracional de la pobreza. ¿Qué significa? Que estas personas que están ahora viviendo en las calles, podríamos pensar que quizás sus padres pidieron dinero o eran pobres, sus hijos van a terminar igual en esa condición. Creo que urge que de alguna manera podamos reconocer tres cosas. La primera, que el que haya gente pidiendo en las calles es un tema de estructura económica y de país, ¿no? O sea, estamos hablando de que hay una responsabilidad de los estados de desarrollar mecanismos para que esta gente pueda tener acceso a la salud, acceso al trabajo y acceso a mejores condiciones. Estamos reconociendo en segundo momento que necesitamos una inversión pública. ¿Para qué? Para hacer un censo. Si no es con inversión pública será complicado. ¿Por qué? Porque quienes hemos estado al frente, tan solo en la Ciudad de México, para atender, para generar nuevas propuestas, hemos sido la sociedad civil, ¿no? Ya sea trabajando en lo individual, trabajando a nivel de red, pero difícilmente la autoridad reconoce que estas leyes que violan derechos no tienen que existir. Y yo creo que ese es un gran pendiente que tenemos con estas personas. En tanto sigamos analizando al sujeto y no analizando la política pública, creo que estaremos cometiendo graves errores a la hora de pensar en las personas que están pidiendo dinero en las calles. Yo lo dejaría aquí para no tener más tiempo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Luria. I'm just going to sit down here for the rest of this. I was quite struck by some of the differences in the profile of beggars that Louis presented there. So a large number of families and women begging. In fact, 80% of the money went back towards families rather than towards drugs, which was the heavy preponderance of the use of begging money in the UK. We've got about 10 minutes or so now. I would like to throw open to anyone who's got any questions or any comments on what they've heard. If I could just ask you again, just to very quickly say who you are and where you're from, and then we'll push on. Sorry, gentleman at the front.
Do I get a mic?
Yes, you will.
Sure. I'm Harry from Monash. Just a very quick question, because we've been talking about begging and from a policy point of view and also from a top-down kind of perspective. But for all the panelists here, have anyone considered begging as a form of agency in terms of from agency point of view? Because I say this because in Singapore it's illegal to beg, but not necessarily homeless people, but beggars have started, they don't sit down, they move from one place to another, approaching a person to another. And the newspaper ran a ridiculous article last year and said that, oh, such a beggar actually in these days have changed because they are now becoming more mobile, they are dressed, not like beggars, and they can earn, this is ridiculous, they can earn up to $200 a day. Of course that is just not true. But, so agency from the point of view of a beggar.
What do you mean by the agency perspective?
Because we tend to look at beggars as passive people.
Passive.
Yeah. So that, yeah.
Okay. Any thoughts on the panel? Sorry, Serge.
Very happy to contribute to that. Can you hear me? Certainly in the UK context, people wouldn't see begging as some kind of exercise of personal agency. They beg because they see it as the least bad of a bunch of really, really bad options. They find it really degrading, really humiliating. It is a choice in the sense that they see the alternatives as so abhorrent or worry generating that begging is preferable. So it's not a kind of an active exercise of agency in the kind of sense that you're meaning, I think.
Can I add something? Yeah. Can I add? Like, it's a people perception. It's not beggars' perception. Whatever you asked, in fact, the people perception and the media perception at least. Media always perceive them very different ways. In fact, whatever the poor people are all across the globe, in fact, they have the different kind of perceptions. All the time their perceptions comes with the negativity. In fact, in Delhi itself or in India itself, those homeless, they are not involved at all in the begging or this kind of act, but this entire media and other civil society and other people who are making this impression for these communities, like for the homeless community, they are also saying like, beggars, they are the beggars. But they are not begging, in fact. They are contributing to making society like life, contributing in the making to the building builders or those kind of things. So it's other perspectives, but certainly it's not agencies just looking for such kind of thing. No.
Sí, bueno, yo coincido que depende también del medio de comunicación y lo que quiera comunicar. Incluso en México hay una película cómica en la cual la persona el protagonista pide dinero en la calle y es alguien millonario, pero habla de una representación social como un estereotipo. Yo no conozco a alguien que le guste pedir dinero en la calle porque sí, ¿no? Porque les digo, en realidad es vergonzoso pedir dinero en la calle, ¿no? Y tampoco no conozco en 23 años que llevo en este tema alguien que sea rico pidiendo dinero en la calle. Son al final representaciones que lo que buscan es generar un estigma en las personas, ¿no? Yo creo.
So someone wants to come back on this. You need the microphone again.
Hi. I want to thank all the speakers. You each touched on a lot of really important issues that resonated a lot with me. My name is Reina. I do work in Malaysia, and I have done work in begging, specifically doing surveys of people who beg. And this is because I guess in the last 5 years, there's historically been, begging is historically something that has been very visible in Malaysia for a long time. And there are also these UK-based laws that we have to prohibit it. In Malaysia, it is a very religious country. People who subscribe to the Islamic or Christian or Buddhist and also Hindu faiths, they like to give alms. This is something that is seen as a very positive thing. So in recent years, you have had sort of Malaysia borrowing from the UK campaign. We also have something that's like killing with kindness, and these posters everywhere telling people not to beg, and these, it appears, are not very effective. And so we actually had a very interesting incident in 2014 that the government decided to make it illegal to give money to people who beg. And there was public outrage. And they were unable, it was a metropolitan only in Kuala Lumpur, they tried to pass this. And there was outrage. They didn't want, the public didn't want those rights limited, right? So it didn't come to pass. Anyways, it was at this time I was in Kuala Lumpur. There were massive media campaigns to vilify beggars, of course. And so I was working with people and other NGOs to do a survey, right? Because the public doesn't understand why people are begging. We did research. I found it to be very interesting on, you talk about court cases in India and how in India there is precedent that judges, courts have said that begging is protected by freedom of expression, right? If you are poor, you should have a freedom to express that poverty and make it known, right, to the public. And I do myself believe this is very important. I wanted to, I guess, raise a couple points, contribute this information, and also raise a couple points. When we did our survey of people who are begging, we were of course trying to figure out what their circumstances were, but we also added questions to ask them their views of policy, right, regarding the begging, and whether they thought it was good to make it illegal, and what alternatives they thought were possible. And we found those questions to be very useful. This is similar to what we're doing in homelessness in general, just trying to get people with firsthand experience to get their policy opinions into the dialogue. Of course, we do find, right, discrimination. Historically, there's a lot of vilification of begging, discrimination, fear of, in particular, even more so than people who are homeless, there's a fear of people who are begging. And I do wonder, when we have campaigns like Killing with Kindness, if ironically you could say, governments are actually contributing to what they fear most. They don't want, right, they're trying to protect business interests and tourism, and by adding more vilification of what begging is, they're probably, and also by trying to silence and sweep these things under the carpet, not only are they like violating the social interests of people who are put into these situations, but they're actually cultivating more fear among tourists or their general public of beggars, and again, undermining their own original intent, you could say. So,
Can I thank you for that contribution, which is really interesting. I'm just going to see if there's any other questions in the room before I ask the panel to move back.
I have a question.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's very interesting. I've never heard of a country trying to make it illegal to give.
Actually, this isn't a question. It's more a sort of a contribution, or a statement of what's obvious. But I discovered that sometimes repeating things that are obvious is useful. I'm a person with lived experience of homelessness, and I'm fairly poor now, and there have been times in my life when I've been very poor. I've never engaged in street begging, but I've certainly engaged in begging. I've asked family and friends for money. I've asked religious organizations for money. I've asked governments for money. And now I run an agency, and I find myself asking governments and agencies and people for money. And I don't find any moral difference between all of those beggings. Although, you know, I dress better now. Well, I guess that's open to a question also. So, but it is important. So somebody had asked about the moral obligations, but we live, well, in America, and I suspect around the world, and where people beg, ask for things all the time. And for some reason, we choose to discourage the people who need it the most. So if you are rich and you don't seem to need money, and you ask somebody for a quarter, they will hand you a quarter. If you look like you're poor and you ask for a quarter, they will walk by you disdainfully. And I think everyone in this room knows that, but I think it's easy for us to forget that. And obviously, by the way, there are laws, which actually is even more remarkable if you think about it. If you really need help, you can't ask for help. It's amazing.
I think that's a very good point indeed, and very well made. It might encourage some of our fundraising departments to rename themselves as begging departments. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to just finally go back to the panel to see if there's any further comments on the points you made, which I thought were very interesting. Oh, so there's one more question at the back. Can we just quickly take that? And then I'll give the panel a quick 30 seconds each, and then they want to come back.
Hi, my name is Aslan. I represent Kazakh British University, Almaty City, Kazakhstan. My question to Sanjay, during your presentation you mentioned about the beggars hardly ever change their places yet. Someone who begs, they keep their own locations to beg. And is it arranged by someone who are external, or is it something that you first serve, or is there any kind of, how beggars organizes their own location? Is it controlled by someone else externally, or is it someone who's physically stronger, just occupy, or, so can you please explain some nuances?
Thank you. Sanjay.
Yeah. In fact, in Delhi, especially in the northern part of India, we are highly populated. In fact, northern part of India will go, it's highly populated. I'll come to your point later, but first we need to understand the number of beggars in Delhi, or beggars in India, in fact. Currently census, 2011, there was census in India. So that time, Census Department has counted 413,670 people have been begging. And the highest number was contributed from a state called West Bengal. So it's a capital of Kolkata. The second number is UP. And Delhi has a number of 2,187 beggars they found in the different locations. So what usually happened, like if I migrated from one place, let's say from Uttar Pradesh, and came down into Delhi for the begging and those kind of things. So how I come over there? Like I directly not come over there, because in the first form of the person, people are not like the beggars. In the first form of the person, people like the homeless, people like destitute. Destitution is the one aspect or one condition. From there they started going to ask for beg. Going to ask for alms and all. So what they used to happen, they moved and they try to get and try to connect with the somebodies. So what the somebody will do, somebody allow you, no, you come at my temple place and this area will be your gift. Or they will assist them like that. From there they can go to the shelter, they can go to the another places. Or maybe the rest of the time they will remain there on the temple points. So in some cases we have, evident that the people have hardly shifted from one place to another place. Like if there's Lodi Road, it's one of the most elite area in Delhi. So I met a person who is begging there for the last 30 years. So they hardly change from that place. And their condition is also not becoming changed because he is disabled, they lost their both legs, so they are not able to get and they are not able to take any training or vocational training or skill building kind of things. So it's very difficult to change their condition. So in these circumstances, people hardly change their beats.
Interestingly, in the UK, they are quite organised about areas where you can busk, where you can make music on the streets. There's official areas on the London Underground where you can do that. And in many cities, the response to large numbers of vendors of street newspapers, the big issue was in your country, they restricted the number of people who could sell these papers, and they put in spots where sites where people could sell these papers, and they were properly organised by the local authority and the vendor. So there's some examples of that being very organised, but not particularly for begging in the UK. We're going to have to finish up, so because I'm being starting into your coffee time, and indeed the next plenary session is in here. I'm so pleased so many of you took an interest in this, and it's not just me that's obsessed by how you tackle begging. I personally don't believe in people's right to beg. I'm at the other end of that. I think people have a right not to beg, and I think that's where you should start from. But I also believe that if you don't understand who begs and why they beg, then you come up with the wrong policy response to this. And likewise, if you set out to tackle street homelessness and don't tackle and understand what's going on during the daytime in terms of begging and street drinking, then you can't end street homelessness unless you tackle the related issues of daytime street begging and street activity. And on that bit of editorial comment, I'll just thank my three speakers and please ask you to do the same. Thank you very much.